So, picking a backend technology, it's one of the most critical decisions you can make. And for years, the whole .NET versus Node.js debate seemed pretty straightforward. But here's the thing. Those old assumptions are now just dangerously out of date. So let's dive into what's really going on today and build a solid framework for making the right call.
Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we're going to bust a big old myth that's been floating around for way too long. Then, we'll get into the actual modern performance numbers, and trust me, they're surprising. We'll compare the ecosystems, figure out the true cost of scaling, and finally land on a clear strategic way for you to choose.
Okay, so for the longest time, the whole conversation was shaped by this one simple idea about what each of these platforms was supposedly for. And this was the classic story, right? .NET was the big, heavy-lifting enterprise workhorse. You used it for intense, complex calculations, what we call CPU-bound stuff. And Node.js? That was the quick, lightweight champion for anything I/O-heavy. It could juggle thousands of connections for chat apps and real-time dashboards like nothing else. Seems simple enough.
But here's the absolute crucial question we have to ask now. Is that story still true? Or is clinging to that old idea actually a huge strategic mistake?
Let's get right into the modern performance reality, because this right here is where the entire game has been flipped on its head. The old rules don't just bend anymore, they completely shatter. Look, the whole idea that Node.js has some special, unique advantage in handling I/O is, to be blunt, an ancient myth. It's just not true today. Modern .NET was rebuilt from the ground up with this incredibly high-performance async model, which means it can handle I/O just as efficiently, if not more so, completely erasing what used to be Node's biggest claim to fame. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at the raw data. When you benchmark pure throughput, how many requests a server can chew through per second, the difference is just wild. ASP.NET Core is hitting around 7.5 million requests per second. Now compare that to raw Node.js at about 650,000. And if you use the super common Express framework on top of Node, you're down to about 165,000. I mean, it's not even a fair fight. So to put a fine point on it, we're talking about a 10 to 40 times performance gap in real-world applications. And listen, this isn't just some abstract number for engineers to argue about. This has massive, real-world consequences for your cloud bill and your company's bottom line. But hey, performance isn't the whole story, right? When you pick a platform, you're also buying into its entire ecosystem of tools and libraries. And this is where .NET and Node.js have two totally different philosophies. I love this analogy because it really nails the difference. The Node.js ecosystem, NPM, is like a massive, sprawling, chaotic bazaar. It's incredible. You can find a ready-made package for literally anything you can imagine, which makes it amazing for spinning up a prototype fast. The .NET ecosystem, NuGet, is more like a carefully curated, fortified library. It's more selective, but everything in it is built for long-term stability and predictability. And that bizarre approach comes with a pretty serious trade-off. Yeah, NPM is the biggest package registry on the planet. Awesome for getting an MVP out the door. But the flip side is huge. The quality, the security, it's all over the map. And this leads to a massive maintenance headache that developers have a special name for: dependency hell. It's this tangled nightmare of conflicting packages that can absolutely grind a project to a halt. So to fight back against that chaos in large JavaScript projects, the Node community has pretty much universally adopted TypeScript. And what's kind of funny is that TypeScript was actually developed by Microsoft. Its entire purpose is to bolt on the kind of structure and type safety that helps prevent all those common errors you get in huge applications. And this forces you to ask a really important strategic question. If your project is going to be big enough and complex enough that you know you need type safety, does it make more sense to try and add it on top of a dynamic ecosystem, or to just start with a platform like .NET where that safety and structure is baked in from day one? All right, let's talk about what really matters to the business, the money. Because the true cost of using a technology isn't just about salaries or server costs. You have to look at the total cost of ownership, the TCO. First things first, can we please put one old myth to bed for good? The idea that .NET is expensive because of Microsoft licensing is ancient history. Modern .NET is completely free, it's open source, and it runs everywhere: Linux, macOS, you name it. The platform licensing cost for both of these is exactly the same: 0. So when you actually build a cost model, you see where the real differences are. Talent costs, pretty comparable. But look at that infrastructure line. This is where that 10x to 40x performance difference comes back to bite you. You absolutely have to adjust your server count based on performance. If one .NET server does the work of 10 Node servers, your cloud bill can be dramatically lower. Then you add in the higher costs of fighting dependency hell in Node, and the true cost picture gets a whole lot clearer. Okay, we've busted the myths, we've looked at the hard data, now let's tie it all together into a simple framework that you can actually use to make the right call for your specific situation.
Think of this matrix as your cheat sheet. It maps what your business needs to what each platform is good at. Is your number one non-negotiable goal speed to market? Node.js is excellent there. But if you need rock-solid enterprise stability or the absolute lowest possible infrastructure cost when you scale, .NET has a clear, undeniable advantage. Want to leverage your existing JavaScript team? Node.js for sure. Want security built in from the ground up, not bolted on? That's .NET.
So let's be super clear. You choose Node.js when speed is absolutely everything. It is perfect for getting that MVP out the door, for teams that already live and breathe JavaScript, and for smaller, self-contained microservices, things like an API gateway or a chat service, where its I/O model is still a great fit and the maintenance burden is a lot more manageable. And you choose .NET when you're in it for the long haul, when you're building a mission-critical system that needs to be stable, secure, and predictable for years to come. It is absolutely the right call for complex workloads or for any app where that insane performance advantage is going to directly save you a ton of money as you scale. But you know, the most sophisticated architects out there often realize this isn't an all-or-nothing game. In the world of modern distributed systems, the real magic is in using the right tool for the right job. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought. What if the best choice for your backend isn't just one or the other? What if it's both? Imagine using Node.js for a nimble real-time API gateway, which then feeds into a core set of ultra-high-performance services built on .NET. That is thinking beyond the binary. That is how you architect for a true strategic advantage.